Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our news in brief. Security and peace are restored in Shkor after the army entered the city and destroyed the armed terrorist organizations which committed a massacre against police and security men, perpetrated crimes and atrocities, and sabotaged public and private properties.
Army units entered Shkor and took control of the city after they managed to destroy the armed terrorist organizations which used guerrilla war tactics with the army units, using the mountain and the wood nature of the area as well as the dense populated neighborhoods to deploy their snipers. The gangsters also mined the bridges, streets and buildings and used sophisticated weapons, RPG rocket-propelled grenades, hand grenades, booby-trapped cars, big quantities of dynamite and explosive charges, which were later dismantled and confiscated by the army units. The population in Shkor and the nearby areas felt safety and security following the intervention of the army, and life has started to go back to normal after several days of insecurity caused by those terrorist organizations.
Before the entry of the army, there were gangsters who used to move in the streets, close the shops by force and demonstrate for 15 days. We suffered a lot. When the army entered, the armed gangs fled to the area. Those gangs even brought us cars to leave our houses and told us that they had already prepared houses to move in Khirbat al-Joz. But we refused, despite their false allegations that the army wanted to kill us and burn our houses. Here we are now, in the midst of the army which restored security and brought food to us. I thank the army which provided us with food and water and all of what we need. They always ask us about what we need. God protect them. I appeal to all my relatives who headed for north to come back into the area. We are comfortable here more than them after the entry of the army.
We are against any sabotage. We had determined to stay in our houses because this is our city and we are living in our homeland, and the army is our sons.
Acts of sabotage have been disclosed, and wherever gangsters and corrupt exist, we see the terrible consequences, like the mass grave, which contains the bodies of police and security men who fell martyrs following the massacres perpetrated by those armed terrorist gangsters in Shkor. Such horrible crimes speak for themselves before Arab and foreign media and correspondents who were eyewitnesses at the scene and heard one of the perpetrators of the crimes talk about how they planned and carried out their atrocities.
My name is Anwar Nafi al-Hosh. Head of the group is Hussein Nawaf. He was the one who committed this operation. We were about 40 people. Zatar is the head of the gang. Nad, his brother, is also head of another gang. The bodies were buried by the so-called Al-Ghab resistance and Al-Jisr resistance. Their names are Hussein, Rashid and Hamdan. We killed them. We killed the security men because Hussein said that either you kill with us, the security men, for freedom, or we will slaughter you. As for the weapons, we brought them from Khirbat al-Joz from Turkey. The number of those whom we buried in the cemetery, in the beginning they gave me 50,000 Syrian pounds. He promised to give me another 50, but he didn't. Zatar had funded us, and later he fled to Turkey. And Hussein Nawaf is the one who beheaded the security men, and then fled. I have been detained for 2 days. I was the one who spoke about the mass grave because I felt it was a crime and injustice. As for the fugitive Anas Qatroun, he is also of Shkor. We belong to Zatra, who is funded by foreign countries and from Lebanon. This is what Zatar told me. I only know him for 25 days now. We received the weapons from Khirbat al-Joz. Rashid, Hussein, Abdel Fattah and others are those who stole the weapons from the security station. All the state buildings and public properties were under wreck and looting, including police stations, institutions, telecommunication centers, banks, post offices and others. The Justice Palace was the most affected by this sabotage because they destroyed all the files which indict them. They detonated the basement by dynamite, stole and broke everything under the juice. All the state buildings and public properties were under wreck and looting, including police stations, institutions, telecommunication centers, banks, post offices and others. The Justice Palace was the most affected by this sabotage because they destroyed all the files which indict them. They detonated the basement using dynamite, stole and broke everything under the disguise of freedom.
Syria's ambassador to the Arab League, Mr. Yusuf Ahmed, has expressed his deep concern and astonishment at the statement made by outgoing Arab League Secretary General Mousى concerning the situation in Syria. Mr. Ahmed said such statements are unbalanced, flagrantly ignoring the reality of what Syria is being exposed to in terms of schemes that serve foreign agendas and use internal agents that seek to deal a blow to security and stability in the country and to Syria's stance and independent national decision. Ahmed added that Mousa's election ambitions have led him to choose a suspicious timing that serves such a greed, prompting him to turn a blind eye to the facts in which he is well aware of. A reply to international pressures which have already been exerted on him, and ahead of quitting his post as Secretary General of the Arab League, he called for some kind of foreign intervention in Syria's internal affairs, not learning from the Libyan lesson in which Libyan blood was shed by NATO airstrikes brought about by UN Security Council resolution that had been unfortunately based on the Arab request, to which Mousa's efforts strongly contributed. Mr. Ahmed affirmed that Syria will go ahead with its reform plans to meet the legitimate demands of its citizens and to perform its national duty in safeguarding their souls and properties and confronting the terrorism that targets its security and stability. Mr. Ahmed warned against any attempt to use the blood of Syrian citizens as a tool to fulfill certain objectives that aim at serving Western agendas which seek to urge the Security Council to issue a resolution in this respect and which need an Arab League mask to implement its schemes that ultimately serve no one but Israel. A new episode in the series of media campaign against Syria has been disclosed through an article in the British Guardian newspaper. American student Tom McMaster, who lives in Scotland, discloses the identity of the Syrian female blogger who was allegedly arrested, according to the misleading media, by security men in Syria. It is another plot fabricated by some deceptive media, revealing the false slogans advocated by them for political agendas that justify the Syrian bloodshed. Some TV satellite channels abandoned their credibility, distorted the honor of press through fabricating events and videos on the false arrest of a Syrian girl they called Amina Abdullah Arraf al-Omari in Damascus by the security men as part of a sinister plot pursued by these TV channels. The British Guardian Daily published remarks McMaster in which he confessed to taking part in the misleading media campaign against Syria. He admitted that he fabricated the name of a supposed lesbian girl by the name of Amina. McMaster alleged that this imaginary girl was forced to seek hide after the security men came to arrest her. He broadcasted a news item about her alleged arrest in Damascus Street, attributing the news to a relative of Amina to give credibility and suggest that Syrian security men were behind her disappearance. According to The Guardian, McMaster confessed in a letter titled Apology to Readers that the alleged Syrian blogger did not exist at all and had never been abducted. He admitted that he was the only person behind all the news, saying he had not expected that the story would attract such high interest. The Guardian said McMaster and his wife were involved in the alleged story of Amina, adding that their messages were sent from Internet Service Centre affiliated to Edinburgh University. The photo published in the context of this fabricated story was found out to be of a woman living in Croatia. Popular and youth activities to support the Syrian pound continued in the governorates of Daraa and Al-Hasaka as people deposited money in their current accounts and opened new ones. They expressed their denunciation of attempts to destabilize the Syrian economy and the national currency, pointing out to the importance of this initiative in supporting the Syrian pound and national economy. They also called on all citizens to take similar initiatives to preserve economic stability and enhance security and safety in Syria. Mr. Abdurrahman Berimo, Secretary of Daraa Ba'ath Party branch, and Muhammad Khalid Al-Hanous, Governor of Daraa, toured exam centers and the faculties of education, letters and law and economics in the governorate. They stressed the importance of providing